Hi, here I am, the time traveler, with my comfort animal, my no-fuss comfort animal. And it's not electronic, nothing. So it just very passively and profoundly uh, provides a meditative silence as I look at and think about what is it that I'm going to present in my next video. I've been I've mentioned it before, OLLI, Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. These are programs funded by a foundation, Osher Institute or something of that sort, that are given at various universities and provide a curriculum for seniors. Okay. We're very fortunate in this locale to have a medical school, and within that medical school is a Center for Healthy Aging. And that they are providing a series of lectures this semester for the OSHA participants, talking about what is it, how can you help yourself as you're aging? What are the things that are helpful from the point of view of their experience as doctors, researchers, people who are professionals in their background. Okay. So the first one, and the other thing to remember, according to their website, in the county where I live, the fastest growing segment of the population among seniors is 90 plus. So we are looking at longevity. We're staring longevity right in the face. And what hopefully we can learn, that's what my purpose is, to warn you, really, to let you know that aging is a job. You just can't sit around. You got it. Back in the day, when lifespans were shorter, indulge yourself, it didn't matter. You were not going to be around for that long, for the most part, although people did. They were always outliers. I mean, probably the greatest mortality was from, birth to 5 years or something of that sort, but it still remained, a lot of people were taken out for various reasons along the way. But always, I think I mentioned that John Adams, one of our kind of revered founding fathers, lived to 90. So people did live longer. Well, the first lecture was interesting, and it was talking about the person who spoke was focused on Alzheimer's and dementia and various kinds of dementia. I have a whole list of various kinds of dementia that are that you can encounter as you march forward through time. It really is kind of mind-blowing. In the United States, what he is saying is that we can expect something like almost 7 million people with dementia. That's a lot of people. And unfortunately, I don't know exactly why, it's more common in women, 61 versus 39%. So we're looking at, big numbers. I'm going to find where he said what kinds. There's tons of the different ones, I hate to tell you. But they have several different categories of dementia, but they all end badly, just put it that way. And of course, Alzheimer's is probably, the highest incidence, and what's most well known, and what most people are experiencing. So, all right, I'm going to tell you this, and you may not want to know. The percentage of people with Alzheimer's disease in the United States in population category. Okay, 65 to 74, it's like, it's like 8%, 6 to 8%, something like that from the graph here. Okay, 75 to 84, now we're creeping up. We're maybe looking at 15%. Okay, that's percent of seniors with Alzheimer's in the United States. Okay, just remember that. And then the graph, I don't know if I could, can I show you the graph? The graph goes up. You see that last one on the graph? That's 85 and over. And that is something a little bit under 35%, looks like, from this copy of the graph. So we're looking at some heavy duty, how can I put it? Let's put it this way. These are the kinds of issues that if you're not going to just die, which most people used to do, if you're going to be living on, this is one of the things that you're going to have to consider going forward. Now, I'm going to tell you something that is so un-American, that is so boring, that is so contrary to our desire for instant gratification and, amazing results with 2 drops of this elixir. One of the things that's really important in terms of prevention, I mean, again, we've always got to say, believe me, that's my, that is the axioms and the postulates that I work with. Nothing makes you bulletproof. Anything can happen to anybody. But you can try to identify behaviors and things to do that are more helpful or that are more deleterious, that cause more problems. So when he's looking at prevention or what you can do to help yourself, so to speak, guess what comes up? Very boring stuff that we don't want to hear about. Diet, exercise, blood sugar, diabetes, preventing diabetes, by the way. By the way, type 2 diabetes is very largely, not 100%, nothing 100%, and I'm not a doctor, but a good amount of type 2 diabetes is prevented by what they call lifestyle, okay? Translate, what does mean lifestyle? Sorry, diet and exercise. Diet and exercise. Just think about that. Aging is a job. What comes natural in aging is decay and death. Because as a species, we're Homo sapiens, we're mammals, we have like 90, I believe it's 96% of the same genetic inheritance as chimpanzees. We only differ from them genetically by about 4%. So, we're really much closer to the bone than we think we are, okay? The one thing that we can do for ourselves is look at those things that are helpful. And we know that diet and exercise are the foundations of healthy aging. Aging is work. If you sit around, nature takes its course. When I was, just mentioning how we are, after all, mammals. We start losing collagen in our early 20s. Why? Because you don't have to look pretty no more. You already have 3 or 4 kids. All right? We start losing muscle mass in our 30s, our late 30s, and it continues progressively through the decades. Why? Because you're a waste of protein to the species after you have completed your reproductive goals and your offspring are of relative age. Now, we're built at our prime reproductive ages, depending on nutrition and that sort of thing, is something like 15 to 25, and I'm probably pushing the 25. But that is the prime time for the humans to reproduce. So that means, say you had your first child, let's be kind, you're 18. Well, 15 years later, you're in your 30s. You're starting to become a waste of protein, and it's actually reflected in the physiology, which is sort of interesting. So if we are going to be living longer, one of the things we really need to do is pay attention to the natural course of aging and see what we need to do to keep the chassis on the road for the extra mileage that we are going to be piling up. But this lecture about, this was Alzheimer's. This is the first one, was like dementia, Alzheimer's, and that sort of thing. But right off the bat, diet, exercise. So start thinking about that, what that could mean for you. I mean, I would be very interested actually to hear what people are doing to most productively face the challenges of this wonderful opportunity that we now have. So I'm going to make this one, pretty short and sweet because everybody's attention span has been reduced to probably more than, I don't know, I think it's a matter of seconds at this point. But I'm pushing the envelope with over 10 minutes. But one of the major things that comes out of this lecture is that dementia of various forms becomes a higher and higher incidence as we get old. They say that Alzheimer's is not a natural part of aging, but at the same time, the incidence of Alzheimer's increases dramatically, especially after the age of 85. And when they were suggesting things that you could do to help yourself, again, nothing makes you bulletproof, so you always have some adventure. There's always a question mark coming. Diet and exercise. So I will be talking much more about that. I'm sure you're convinced of that. And now my companion animal and I will say goodbye, and thanks so much for listening to the time traveler as she goes on her adventure. I think the adventure of Marco Polo is nothing by comparison to the time traveler and all of us older people moving into the great unknown as we age far longer than was ever before possible for so many people. So thanks a lot. Have fun.